Manuel Vexler is the Executive Director of the AKFI Association and also an instructor and facilitator at Cornell University. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
Much appreciated, Jack. And I know you woke up early in the morning for this interview. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to talk about 4 articles that you've written on the ISCEA Substack blog. They focus on artificial intelligence and how that is interacting with sustainability. Of course, artificial intelligence, a huge disruptor in the supply chain industry, a huge disruptor in industries right across the world as well. The first thing I want to sort of touch on is how the sustainability transaction standard transforms supply chain, ESG, and power next generation AI. Let's start with that. Explain to us, what is the transaction standard?
The transaction standard sets the base for collaboration between in the supply chain between their customers and their suppliers. So before we even talk about AI, we have to talk about data and data quality. Before we talk about data quality, we need to talk about trust and the framework for trust between the participants in the supply chain. And this is where STS starts in the establishing the framework for companies to be exchanging data and information so they can support AI. And part of that, it's actually it's a unique standard. We didn't find a parallel in the industry because most of the sustainability and AI standards are really reflecting the function of a single company. They focus on sustainability per company or not per supply chain. So, and we feel it's a transaction because data is value. We say data is gold. So we have to look from a transactional viewpoint, and of course, we cannot have a transaction if we don't have trust.
Yeah, very important. And it's interesting how you focus on the broader picture, not just the individual company. Of course, we're talking about how all this data interacts across the whole supply chain ecosystem. You describe sustainability as more of that transaction word rather than a goal. Talk me through what exactly you mean by that.
So sustainability has 3 key elements: the planet or the environment, the people, and the profits. And in most cases, in most initiatives in sustainability are unfortunately considered as being expenses. They are considered to be costs, not bringing values to the companies. We need to change this model to add the value creation by having these transactions, these exchanges of data, product, services, which really define the supply chain.
And a big part of this as well is having data organized in a way that is accessible and useful and reliable to artificial intelligence models as well.
That's clearly so. And if we go one more level of details, actually the problem suppliers, especially large suppliers, face when they have to provide sustainability data is every customer has different standards, different objectives for sustainability. Let me give you a quick example. One company can have a net zero objective of 2030. The other company may have a 2050. Now, the supplier has to meet both criteria in order to continue to be a supplier for these 2 companies. Of course, that creates a lot of disruption inside the supplier that has to do reporting, has to provide the information, has to provide the products according to these net zero strategies.
It really sounds like a lot of this comes down to trust as well, as a key element in sustainability partnerships. So How does trust influence the success of these transactions?
Uh, in two ways. First thing, the sustainability, especially in the European Union, in California, there are some of the most stringent sustainability regulations. Uh, so in order to be able to perform in those environments, in order to provide sustainability data, you have to actually be audited. So trust trust comes first, auditing comes second, and unfortunately fines come third in case that one of the two are broken, the trust or the sustainability data.
And how do you think these AI technology tools that we're seeing emerging every day, really at the moment, are accelerating sustainable transactions?
Um, Again, AI, it's only as good or a little bit less good than the data we provide to AI. It hallucinates, it makes up stuff, right? So let's assume that we have the ideal AI tool that provides 100% reliable data. However, AI, it's really a very intricate, very complex finding search engine, right? If you don't give the right data, there is no way you can provide the correct results. Now, as I mentioned in the previous example, when a supplier has to comply with multiple customers' requirements, there is a problem of the quality and the quantity of data they need to provide. That's where actually this STS framework will come in place to simplify and streamline the exchange. As you very well said, based on trust and based on verify according to the regulatory bodies, right? Auditing, essentially.
You also wrote a blog post on understanding your operating environment. It's called a prerequisite for sustainable and AI-driven supply chains. Of course, this talks about a lot about sort of the risks and how regulations and geopolitics can disrupt the supply chain. I think anyone who works in supply chain has really sort of heard a lot about geopolitics disrupting supply chain in recent months and in recent years. There's a number of examples of politics and global issues such as trade tariffs at the moment, or if we speak about a few years ago, of course, COVID was a big disruptor of supply chains. So, what are some of the most underestimated risks, in your view, that companies should watch out for when it comes to external factors and understanding the operating environment?
Uh, in the first place, the risks that you mentioned are resulting in the fragmentation of the requirements for sustainability data, for instance, since the focus is on sustainability. So what we observe, for instance, in the United States, different states have now different sustainability rules. If you want to do business with California, which is the fourth largest economy in the world now, you need to comply with California laws, regardless of your, where your home office is or where you're based. The same with European communities, and one least understood. So this is the risk of if you want, of fragmentation of the data and the sustainability processes, which result in increased cost, complexity, and risk of non-compliance, right? Providing the wrong data. So the other risk is when the companies deal with information sharing. They want, and there is the risk of not being able to share the information because of the level of details or the technology they use. So there is a technological risk associated with that. But I would say the primary risk is this fragmentation they observe in the world. So together, as you mentioned, with tariffs, with new rules of supply and demand, if you want, or suppliers, that leads to this fragmentation, which is costly, complex, and can disrupt the supply chains.
Hmm. In this article, which is well worth checking out if you're interested, you've given a few practical examples of where artificial intelligence is already being integrated into sustainability, things like inventory management, waste reduction, and using machine learning for route optimization as well. One of those examples is Walmart as well, obviously the big primarily American retailer there, and you talk about how it's using integrated AI technology for inventory management systems and how that's reducing waste. Talk to us about the benefits of that specific example.
Absolutely. So the first thing to keep in mind is that AI, it's an added tool. It is a very good, very versatile tool, but the process I'm describing there, it's actually a continuation of the process of supply chain management, and we have many systems in place that were augmented by AI rather than replaced by AI. So, in other words, if you want a strategy for your supply chain, AI can propose, can distill a few strategies for the executives of the company on how to diversify and be optimized in the same time. And this is one of the strengths of the AI in this example. It can help optimize and really keep up to date with the supply chain. Let's take maybe an example which is not in the article, but one of the rules now in European Union is to show to have a traceable uh, um, evidence, if you want, or history of the product, where it was produced, how it was produced, where the materials, where the inputs are coming from, and so on. So this is where AI comes stronger and adds a very powerful tool. But we should think of a toolkit not as AI versus the present systems
Yeah.
in place.
Yeah, it's interesting how you talk about AI sort of further optimizing supply chain systems or taking it to the next step. Because I know Amazon, obviously a world leader in delivery, and they do it on such a mass scale as well, but they've always been quite particular with how they optimize delivery routes and that sort of stuff in its network. But now they're sort of, as you mentioned as well in this article, they're using artificial intelligence in the form of machine learning to enhance that process as well.
And I think in the case of Amazon, and maybe not maybe, but many other examples, you'll have the case of including IoT, Internet of Things. So, the theme of today is have data, then you'll have AI, right? In order
Mm.
to have real-time data, so current AI systems are trained on massive amount of data, but it's historical. By the time you finish the training, you are 3 months behind of the data on the internet, not to mention about manufacturing data, production data, supply chain data. So closing the loop with IoT, Internet of Things, which can provide real-time data over cellular or Wi-Fi networks, mobile networks, fixed networks. Now you can have a complete system that has uh, consider it in just-in-time information about and decision-making power based on that. For example, if a truck gets delayed, your manufacturing can be delayed if it's an essential part, and most parts are essential in an optimized system. Now you can work out on a different production line, waiting for the truck to arrive, and you'll know exactly when it arrives, how it deals with traffic, and so on.
We talk a lot about resilience, and I guess on a small scale, that is kind of an example of making sure that your supply chain operating environment is resilient when you have smaller delays. And then, of course, there's bigger issues such as new sustainability legislation or new techniques that have sort of more of a widespread, bigger picture impact as well. And of course, resilience is a little bit of a buzzword as well, I think, in the supply chain industry, particularly at the moment. So, how does understanding the operating environment make resilience something that can actually be achieved?
So first thing, you're absolutely right. We talk resilience as being only one aspect of the manufacturing process or the resilience of the company, but underneath it has multiple aspects of how to achieve it, right? So take resilience in the supply chain. Does it mean that you have to have five different suppliers? Not necessarily, because you may be adding complexity without adding resilience, adding robustness, if you want, to your supply chain. On the other hand, we can talk about financial resilience, not in this interview, but there is another aspect. And companies have to be sustainable and resilient. And that means to how to mitigate the risks. Where the most risks are coming in sustainability or actually in productions, in manufacturing, is from the supply chain. So it's one process optimization. We work historically in optimizing the supply chain by choosing one reliable supplier, geographically independent. Now there are other factors. You mentioned tariffs, you mentioned reliability. Those can affect the resilience of your manufacturing, of your production, almost day in, day out, right? So we're talking about resilience over time. Before that, we thought resilience is 5 years, 10 years, 100 years for companies. Now we're talking maybe the next day.
And speaking of, I guess, the fast nature of supply chains at the moment, particularly today, artificial intelligence really disrupting the industry. The artificial intelligence that's available to us is rapidly developing. And of course, that raises the question of human analysts versus artificial intelligence. And I'm sure there's a lot of supply chain professionals and even students thinking going into the field, contemplating the future of the career, given the automation that is becoming more and more common and more advanced as well around artificial intelligence. So it's a really interesting question that you explore as well in another article. I guess what is the answer to that question about if human analysts still beat artificial intelligence?
Well, I don't see it as a competition. We have areas of competition on Go or chess with AI, and frankly, because it's a rule-based game, even very complex like Go,
Mm.
AI can figure it out. What do you do when you don't have a rule complex, or you have a complex environment which is not rules-based? In this case, and we don't talk much in the business world, but people have intuition. We call it gut feel. So something may be not right without knowing exactly what's not right. Since AI is missing this kind of hints or gut feel, if you want, it's hard to imagine a computer as a gut feel. Uh, the human judgment remains irreplaceable. It also adds context, intuition, right? History. Oh, I've seen this happening 5 years ago. Imagine you're driving on a very slippery road suddenly. Uh, how do you deal with that? Well, I have experience. I've done it 5 years ago. Suddenly, this pops in my mind, and it's real time. AI will have to compute probably for about, I don't know, so many minutes, if not hours, to understand the situation. Too late, too little, too late. We say.
Is there a risk that as we sort of increase this automation and use artificial intelligence more, that could perhaps create blind spots in the supply chain?
Yes, and it's part of a greater risk as we struggle to understand how AI works, and the scientists are still trying to figure it out. It's very difficult to understand how the system makes decisions based on the data we provide. We know it's not, based on the previous example, we know it's not human. It doesn't have intuition, doesn't have dealing with ambiguity. It has to come up to a logical conclusion. Logic works in most situations, but not in critical situations.
And
When
where do you,
time
sorry,
comes critical. No, when time, for instance, becomes critical. Thank you.
sorry to cut you off there. So where do you see the biggest risks in this trend?
Overconfidence. Humans have a interesting bias, which is bias in believing more systems and machines than believing other humans. Maybe for a reason. I'm not going to go there, but we think that whatever we read or we see coming out of a cloud computing in this case, it's better than coming from another human. And this is a risk because this overconfidence in AI, it's actually front page, I'm sure, in Australia as much as it is in the US or European Union.
Yeah, I guess it's a relief that there is still a need, an irreplaceable need for humans in the world, and we're not all going to be replaced by artificial intelligence algorithms. So it's good to know that as people that we still have a little bit of value there. Let's move on to this final article, which talks all about bridging the gap and overcoming artificial intelligence implementation challenges. So talk to me about the most common barriers that you've seen in supply chains.
Um, well, the most common barriers today, I'll start with something that I usually share, and I'm saying data is made by humans for humans consumption. We talked about humans versus AI. So we can deal pretty quickly with data that is inconsistent or maybe irrelevant. And if we talk about the restructuring of the data, the way data flows in the supply chain, until now, traditionally, data was in the form of a frame agreement, of a contract between the customer and their suppliers. And that requires transfer of data in one way. It's a request. I'm going to pay you so much. You deliver on this data in this place. This is the quality metric. These are the quality metrics. This is what we want from you. You sign to the dotted line, and you have an agreement. Now the agreement reads, "Oh, by the way, I want also all your data." It's like, what? My data? It's trade secrets, sourcing, salaries, if you want, or um, and the risk is this: what has changed? Well, sustainability changes the flow, adds to the flow of data from the customer to the supplier. Now the supplier becomes the main part in supplier in delivering data to the customer. So it's a completely change or addition to the flow of data, which is obviously critical.
Hmm. When change happens, obviously people are also involved in that process, and it's important to sort of, I guess, shepherd people and organizations and processes through those shifts. So, at an organizational level, what are those shifts that are so important for success?
Um, the we talk so much about data that I'm a little bit reluctant to mention it again, but it is really a complete transformation. We call it digital transformation, actually. So, since companies have different levels of digital transformation, usually measured in maturity curves, this puts a lot of strain in the supply chain. You may have a highly advanced customer that is required now their suppliers to go through an accelerated digital transformation process, which means collecting data, processing data, storing data, labeling data, and keeping it keeping it private and exposing only the data that is required. This kind of transformation process is even in large suppliers with multiple contracts, multiple customers, becomes a crucial problem. How quickly can they transform and respond to the demands, not only of their customers, but the demands of the regulators, which are coming very fast and I would say furious right now with 2026 at the horizon.
Mm. Changes as well. It's obviously always great to measure success and have sort of metrics that you can measure against and know, I guess, when you've arrived somewhere. So, what sort of metrics and outcomes matter the most in those transformation projects?
I would start with the business impact. We're starting to talk about sustainability, and maybe we end with sustainability being defined as the planet, the people, and the profits. And what's the business impact of AI? We are still struggling. Many companies that introduce AI struggling to find out what is the business impact. Is it positive? Is it significant? Of course, the AI vendors claim that it's revolutionary, and it is. But in what way the revolution will trickle down into the company? The other challenge is the rate of adoption. How much of my IT budget I should allocate for AI? 5%, 50%, 150%, go and borrow money and allocate more. And the last one is this dynamic that you very well described between humans and the tool, the AI tool. And that boils down to adaptability. Uh, how the AI adapts to a human, we hope still it will adapt, and how humans adapt to AI. So
Yeah,
those will be the three metrics.
Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. And I think a lot of people are really looking at sustainability at the moment and artificial intelligence and looking how the two can work together, especially as technology continues to grow. And as we've seen, there's plenty of examples, real world examples of where it's being tried and tested by organizations right across the world. If you want to find out more, of course, you've written articles on our Substack channel, which is Supply Chain Journal, ISCA Supply Chain Journal. So if you look that up, you'll be able to see a number of articles and from a number of sustainability and supply chain experts, including yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a bit of a chat to us here as well. I know we've just scratched the surface and there's so much more to talk about, but it's really interesting stuff, and I think all these questions are certainly questions that many in the supply chain industry are asking, whether it's implementing AI into their own businesses or whether it's just sort of a bit of self-reflection on the way the industry and your own careers is sort of moving as well.
Absolutely. And, if you can leave the audience with a couple of very quick notes, trust, it's important, not only between humans or businesses, but humans and AI tools and machines. The other thing is keep keep the profitability in mind. We tend to think that the profitability comes as a result of large investments. No, it comes about careful business planning, and there is no other place more complex than business planning, including the supply chain.
Yeah, in great I guess great summaries to remember as well, and keep in mind. Manuel Vexler, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Jack, and hope to talk to you soon again.
Chat soon. Thank you.